Hey, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of Film Freaks, where we talk about movies that we love. And this time, we are going to talk about the 1998 movie called Dark City, which is one of my absolute favorite movies. Awesome film. And this is a movie that is directed by director Alex Proyas from Australia. And with me here is Mr. Moody. Say hello.
Hey, how are you guys doing today? Listening to the Film Freaks TV on Zoom. So this is our first Zoom one that we're doing for Film Freaks, and it probably won't be the last. I'm guaranteeing it.
Yeah, with the way things are going on with the COVID virus, we got to take things carefully, and it's just easier to do it this way. And plus, we can have guests on or whatever, and it doesn't really matter about the distance. So,
Exactly. Literally, we're definitely standing more than 6 feet away from each other. We don't need masks right now, particularly, but it's still some days it might be cool to wear one. I don't know.
Right. Okay, so on to the movie. As I've said, this is a movie that came out in 1998, and I remember because at the time, everybody was talking about Titanic. It was like Titanic, and that was what was dominating the film industry at the time. And along comes Alex Proyas' Dark City, and I remember seeing it in the theater. There was maybe 15 other people in there with me, and I was just blown away. I could not believe this movie kind of sailed on through with as little notice as it did. To me, this movie was a billion times better than Titanic. And I remember reading that even Roger Ebert said that the last time he had felt this blown away by something so original was Stanley Kubrick's 2001. And that's really the big thing about this film, is that it is a whole and completely original film that just creates its own world and its own characters, and it's really an amazing picture. So Alex Proyas is a guy that he made a big splash for himself. He's the guy that directed The Crow back in 1994, which of course had the infamous Brandon Lee incident, which was actually a really good film. And unfortunately, the incident with Brandon Lee sort of overshadowed that film.
Well, yeah, it did, but as a fan of The Crow as well, like I love that movie a lot. The thing about it is, people still love that movie.
Oh yeah, it's a great film.
Yeah, but even though that might have overshadowed it a little bit, I feel like that movie still, like, a lot of people still can watch that movie. It's just a little harder these days because you're thinking about, I mean, what happened, and I'm
Right.
guessing, and I'm wondering if Alex learned like a very valuable lesson with that of, like, because I don't really remember if there wasn't like any guns in this movie at all, like.
Well, I think there wasn't much, but I do know that he doesn't really talk about the incident much, and in fact, he doesn't really talk to the press in general. But yeah, he kind of came out of nowhere, and this movie was like a huge hit, and it kind of sort of set his bones. And then from that came Dark City, and I was just blown away, and I just thought this was really great. Unfortunately, because of Titanic and because of other reasons that we'll get into, this movie was considered something of a flop at the time, unfortunately, even though now it's considered a huge cult underground hit. And a lot of people talk about it just being as one of the most amazing films ever. And it's extremely influential, especially when you get into things like The Matrix and other sci-fi based films that come later on. So
Wait, was The Matrix like right after this or
it was
something?
like a year after it. Yeah.
So do you think that they took basically
I'm
from
sure.
Dark
I'm sure
City?
they saw it. I'm sure they were influenced by it.
And another thing I wanted to make mention before I forget, because you know me, I forget a lot of shit. So then, like, later on, I'm like, damn, I wish I brought that up. But you know what was also inspired by this movie? I think
What?
Joss Whedon's Hush
Oh
episode.
yeah, that's yeah, definitely. I was going to bring that up later
Okay,
on.
let's bring that up later on. But I just wanted to make mention about that. I wasn't sure if that was something you were going to discuss.
Absolutely. So he made The Crow, he made Dark City. Then later on, he would make I, Robot in 2004. And
Which wasn't that good. I
Yeah. Knowing with Nicolas Cage in 2009, and then Gods of Egypt in 2016, which got panned pretty heavily. I actually haven't seen the last two. I thought iRobot was okay, but I never.
iRobot was not nearly as good as The
No,
Crow and
no.
Dark
But
City, but it
I
was
never
good.
saw Knowing, and I never saw Gods of
The
Egypt.
Knowing was boring to me, honestly.
Yeah.
I own it, and I own it because of Nicolas Cage, of course.
Well, yeah.
I've got to own everything Nicolas Cage these days. You got me hooked on that with
Oh yeah.
what's that movie we watched? The Vampire's
Oh,
Kiss.
Vampire's
I
Kiss.
got to own everything Nicolas Cage now.
Nice. Oh yeah, he's amazing.
He is.
But so yeah, Alex Proyas, in addition to directing Dark City, he also wrote it and produced it. And this movie it won a Silver Scream Award, and it won an award for the Bram Stoker Award for Best Screenplay. It was nominated for 6 Saturn Awards, and it ended up winning the Saturn Award for Best Science Fiction Film for that year. And it was nominated for a Hugo, which is like the best of science fiction. So it has made a pretty big impact, and a lot of directors will talk about this being one of their favorite films, and it is incredibly visual. And all of the visuals that were established in The Crow really comes out in Dark City, like times 10.
Mhm.
So I guess we'll talk a little bit about the folks that are involved, the actors and characters. The main guy is Rufus Sewell, who's playing a guy named John Murdoch, the sort of everyman guy who sort of wakes up without having a single memory of who the hell he is, next to like a dead person, and he gets this phone call says, "You better leave."
Right. There was one point I laughed because like he was, I guess he had amnesia or what. Well, I mean, his brain, like his thoughts were kind of taken out or whatever,
Right.
and everything. So or memories. So there was one part that said J Murdoch, and then he was like John James J. Like he was
Right. Trying to figure it out.
trying to figure out it was John Murdoch, and I thought that was kind of interesting way
Yeah.
to like introduce the character.
And it's a very meaningful and layered opening. If you ask me, it's like a straight out of film noir from the 40s. This whole movie is very film noir, and he's
Kind
got
of
that
Blade Runner like.
Blade Runner, or I'm thinking of the earlier film noir things where you have these protagonists who don't really know everything what's going on, and they can't understand stuff, and they got to figure things out.
Mhm.
So he's there doing that, and there's also William Hurt. He's the guy who plays the cop, Inspector Bumstead of all things, which I always thought was funny. Kiefer Sutherland, who plays Dr. Schraber, who also kind of plays him in a very like, oh God, what's the guy from M? Peter Lorre. He kind of reminds me of Peter Lorre in this.
You know what? I never thought about that, but yeah, Kiefer Sutherland has a Peter
Yeah.
Lorre kind of way. That's funny.
And he's the third guy. He's the doctor who calls them up, and he's sort of the connection. He's the guy that knows what's going on.
He's the guy. He's basically the well, I'm hearing some feedback right there. Hold on a second. Yeah, he's the guy that basically tells you what is it? Everything that's going on. He's the what's that called? Where he just he's the one who like fills in the gaps for the audience.
Yeah, he's like exposition guy.
Exposition guy at one point, and I thought, wow, okay, now I get it. Okay, now I understand what's going on.
And he has this sort of way of talking with his dialogue that's quite unique.
I like that.
I know, it was really cool. He really made that character his own.
Well, if you look at it right now, like if you look at a lot of his roles that he's played, ever since he did like 24, he's kind of played the same kind of character and everything, and his stuff's very monotone and this got him a chance to be like kooky and weird and out there, and he wasn't the lead, and that was interesting enough too, because you give movies like Flatliners and all these movies that he was doing right before, like maybe 5-6 years before here. Now he's like he's third banana to.
And it's
everybody.
interesting because apparently, and this is something that I read when I was researching the background on this, but apparently William Hurt was supposed to have been Dr. Schraber.
Oh wow.
And I think they were supposed to have opposite roles here, but it turned out the opposite. And, like I said, Keith Sutherland just kind of stepped in and made this character his own. And to the glory of the film, it really, really works. Mm. And then the fourth major character that's in here is Emma Murdoch, or also Anna, played by the wonderful and glorious Jennifer Connelly, who's never been more beautiful ever. Just a heartbreak on legs.
This was a what was that movie? Requiem for a Dream too.
Right.
This is like a couple years, I think 2 years before, and I thought she was just absolutely just drop dead gorgeous.
She was luminous
when she was singing and everything in
yes.
in the club. I was just going crazy.
Yes,
she was just beautiful. So it was great to see her in this movie as well.
And she did an excellent job with her character. Her two characters, really, when you think about it.
Really, I mean, it's pretty much the same character, right? Isn't it?
Well, it's the same body, but remember, she kind of gets her memories or her stuff erased. So she was Emma Murdoch, but then she becomes this Anna person later, who's a different person, even though it's the same body.
Right.
It's a little confusing.
It's a little the movie's very, very confusing, but it's enough. Like, there's enough information to understand it. It's just I have to preface this by saying I've never actually, this is the first time seeing it. So
wow.
Yeah, and I've owned it for a while. Like, this isn't it's not something that I've. It's just something like I haven't really been. You have to be in the mood for this kind of thing. It's like The Matrix. I can't really watch The Matrix all the time. There's some people who love The Matrix and can just watch it all the time. I have to be in the mood. And so I wasn't really ever, I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to try this out, because I knew sort of what it was about. It was a sci-fi, type thing that was very Matrix-like.
And it's very cerebral, and it's very visual heavy, and it's a thinking person's film. This is like an onion. There's a lot going on in different layers, and we'll kind of get into that. But I've seen this movie dozens and dozens of times. It's one of the ones I love to bring out and show folks. In fact, when Lenora gets back, I'll definitely be showing her this, because this is all kinds of awesome.
Did you rewatch it? Right before
yes.
This? Okay.
I love watching this. But before we get a little bit more, I want to talk a little bit about some of the supporting actors, because they're very interesting, especially the people who are basically the strangers, like in Hush,
Well, those were the gentlemen, right?
Right. So they're very similar. But you've got Ian Richardson, who plays Mr. Book, and you've got Bruce Spence, of course, from what's the Mel Brooks film? Road Warrior. He's playing Mr.
Oh, not Mel Brooks. You mean Mel Gibson?
Mel Gibson. Sorry. Yeah.
but now I want to see Mel Brooks's Road Warrior.
Yeah.
That would
a little old for that, maybe, but yeah. But yeah, Bruce Spence was there. He played Mr. Wall, and then you have, interestingly enough, Richard O'Brien playing Mr. Hand. Now, I say that's interesting because I don't know whether you know, but he's the guy who co-wrote the Rocky Horror Picture Show, from which the gentlemen are the strangers are kind of pulled from. They're based on one of the characters, Riff Raff,
like the character he played.
Right. And so, yeah, he's the guy who wrote that. He also wrote the follow-up movie, Shock Treatment. But so there's definitely a connection with Rocky Horror there, although not the one most people would have thought. And then finally, there is Melissa George, who plays one of the characters named May. Gets killed, unfortunately, and she's a lovely actress. And there's a lot of Australian folks in here, because this was an Australian production. Go ahead.
Well, the only thing I was going to say about that is that the problem I had with it is all of them have makeup on, and they have names like Mr. Hand, Mr. Wall or something.
Right.
Mr.
Mr. Book.
Book, Mr. Wall. I didn't know who each one really was. I was because as I was watching, I was looking at the IMDb to try to like put a face to who everybody is, and I couldn't even tell, necessarily because
Hmm.
I don't follow Richard O'Brien enough. I don't, I don't even know. Like I know Ian Richardson. I've seen his name in a ton of movies and stuff. He's a big name, but Bruce Spence I did not know at all. So like I might have seen these guys, but I wouldn't know who each character
Right.
was.
Well, plus the makeup was really, really good. And here's
Yeah.
the thing, excuse me, these are alien creatures trying to figure out what the hell humans are. And that's kind of where the movie really sort of centers itself. There's a lot of stuff pulled from film noir and stuff like The Twilight Zone. You can see Metropolis in there. We talked a little bit about how Kiefer Sutherland's performance kind of reminds me of Peter Lorre. I'm specifically thinking of M. I don't know if you've seen the classic movie M,
I've
but
heard of it.
it's straight out of that. It's a fabulous film, fabulous role.
Wasn't
Uh,
it, that's a Criterion too, I think.
oh yeah, absolutely. Nosferatu is in there, and some people have even said just the presentation of the city reminds them of the Japanese manga movie Akira, which I could see as well. So there's just a lot going on with this, and unlike the movie like Titanic, which came out and like broke all the box office things because it's pretty much kind of a dressed up popcorn movie, there was a lot more going on in this film. I mean, it still made 27 million in American and foreign box office. It's nothing to sneeze at, but it was still considered kind of a failure, unfortunately. But what the movie's talking about is, what is it that makes human beings? Is it memory? Is it history? And what is history other than other people's memories? Because that's what they're all doing. They're all mixing up everybody's memory. These aliens have stolen people. They've put them into this little like mouse maze to see how they react, and then they give them new memories and new identities to see how they tick, because they have no idea what human beings are like. And because of the aliens are asking these questions, we in the audience are ending up asking these questions too. What is it that makes us a specific human being? Is it our memories? Is it the histories, the continuity that we have going through life? Or what is it? Is it a soul? Is it a spirit? We don't really know.
Didn't
And we
they? Aren't they
probably never know.
Aren't they in search of the soul at one
Yeah,
point?
right.
So like he can lead them to the soul or something.
Right. Because they have no real concept of this. As I recall, there was something about their planet was either dying or their society was dying, or there was something going on, and they were stealing humans, putting them into this testing lab thing to try and figure out what it is about humans. Because even though they kind of see them as sort of violent, strange, and degenerate creatures, somehow they've managed to continue living and building a civilization and living long and having these weird memory things that I don't think these aliens have. They're like these light creatures, these things composed of light, and they inhabit the dead bodies of other people. And when they hang out in them long enough, they become gaunt and white and pale and bald, and some of them have like weird clicky teeth and long nails. They are creepy as hell. We talked a little bit about how they're similar to the gentleman in Hush and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think these guys are even worse. They certainly are powerful. They have what's called, they call it the tuning, but it's basically a form of psychokinesis where they're able to sort of change and reshape reality by the force of their minds. So while they're using Dr. Schreiber to add the chemicals and the formula into the people's heads to imprint, quote unquote, the memories on them, in the meantime, they are using their mind thing, that whatever that big giant machine was, to amplify their telekinesis or their psychokinesis powers. And they're like changing whole blocks of the city, like it's physically changing, so that it's never the same thing twice. Very interesting.
The buildings are going into each other and shit, and that was
Right.
just I was just like, what the fuck is going on here? Like and then I guess at midnight everybody falls asleep or something, like
Right,
all the
right, right,
humans
right.
fall asleep, And so it's just like what the fuck is like happening
And
necessarily?
and the reason we see all this is because we're now seeing everything through John Murdoch's eyes, because John Murdoch woke up, and I think this is something to do with what Dr. Schraber gave him, and he now has the same kind of psychokinetic powers that the aliens do, and they don't like this. They're going to try and kill him.
Well, I
And
think okay, so because you've seen this movie a lot of times,
oh yeah,
and so you probably know all the answers that I'd probably ask. But my biggest question too was like, so Dr. Schraber talked about how that basically he's evolving, as one of them or whatever, like. My
how
big
John
question,
Murdoch is evolving. You're
yeah,
saying?
John Murdoch is evolving. That's what he
Uh-huh.
said at one point. So he's got like bigger powers than
Yes.
the other guys, basically, right?
Right.
What did it ever explain like why that happened? Like why is he evolving and is it because he's a human?
Well, part of it's because he's a human, but part of it's because of what Schraber has been shooting into him. He sort of picked this guy to be the guy who was going to, sort of, just like the Matrix, all of a sudden, become alive. Hello, hi there, Jackie.
Yeah, Jackie's over here hanging out. She's about to pick up her dog, I
But,
guess. Or she just
but
wanted to say hello.
just like in the Matrix, where you have, the one guy who wakes up and understands what's going on, the same thing is happening with John Murdoch. He's the guy that Schraber has picked to be the guy to wake up and hopefully lead human beings to figure out what's going on so they can get out of there. And so he continues to do this. And later on, in fact, after they all get captured, remember, he was supposed to imprint them with like all of the memories of all of the aliens, and instead he gives them something else, and he ends up coming out of that thing with an even more powerful version of the telekinesis, and he's able to fight them with the mind battle thing, which was really freaking cool. If you ask me.
Yeah, at the end, toward the end, like where he's just like he gets like I love that scene. I guess we could talk about it later too, but I love the part where he just comes out of the
Right,
thing and
right,
all of a
right.
sudden he just like explodes and then just starts like people start like attacking him, but he attacks them back even worse and
Right, right.
like wow, this is epic.
It is. It really is, and it's such a very interesting mixture of 40s style film noir with 90s style science fiction that you really I have never seen before, and probably will never see again, because it's such an original film. And for those of you, if you have not seen the film but you've seen The Crow, then you know how um, Alex Proyas has use of all of those really, really cool, extremely detailed miniatures that he uses, those little models. It's like that on like a much bigger scale.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually it ends up becoming kind of like a symbol, because it's the same thing that the aliens are pretty much using for the humans. They're sort of building these little models, these model sets for these people to be in, and the people don't know about it except for Rufus Sewell. I mean, even he's got to try and figure stuff out, and he needs help from Dr. Schraber. So it's all pretty interesting. And then you got poor William Hurt's character, who doesn't understand what's going on, but he starts to pick up on it later on. He gets dragged into it, and then unfortunately he has that amazing scene where they end up going off into outer space with the one gentleman,
Uh,
and he ends up getting sacrificed. But it's very, very cool. And then towards the end, I guess the idea is that John Murdoch becomes sort of after the battle, he becomes the most powerful one. He sort of takes over the big machine, the amplifying machine, and then he changes the reality of the Dark City itself, and it reveals that it's a spaceship. The entire thing is like this giant spaceship, and he ends up turning the whole thing upside down, and it's now geared towards a star, so that this world, which was formerly completely always in darkness, now has a sun. This Shell Beach that he was from, that everybody was talking about, he just creates it with his mind, and that force field he just fills with a new. He just makes an ocean come, and all of
exactly.
a sudden now there's a Shell Beach, and yeah, it's like now he's kind of like the ruler of this weird spaceship thingy that for all we know is millions of light years away from Earth anyway, so they could never go back.
Exactly. And I like that. Like when we find out it's a like a spaceship, and I forgot who it was. Was it the some of the one of the characters, one of the guys falls out of the spaceship into the to the space.
Right. William Hurt does.
Yeah, William Hurt does. Okay, I thought it was, for some reason I thought it was one of the Misters, like Mr. Hand
He
or
does. The both of them do. Two of them.
okay. All right, yeah. So they fall into space and everything, and I'm like, holy crap, what the hell is going on?
Right.
Like,
Right. Right.
I
Right.
mean, this is definitely a movie. Honestly, I would suggest that you do put your phone away and you
Oh
pay
yeah.
attention, because like, I mean, I really wasn't I was really paying attention because I had to do this video, but I guarantee you if I had been, not, I would have missed like a million things that was going on, because there's always something
Oh yeah.
happening in
And
this
it's
thing.
it's very very detailed, and everything kind of matters, which is why I love this movie. You need to pay attention. You need to think, and you will be rewarded if you pay attention and you allow yourself to sort of be challenged by the film. It's beautifully shot. It's fabulously acted. I can't think of better performers who would have done a better job in this. These guys were all great, and you can tell they really enjoyed themselves in these roles. Actors don't get roles like this very often, original roles like this in such an original motion picture. So you could tell they enjoyed themselves.
I haven't really seen Rufus Sewell in in a lot of stuff. Like, he's not
It's been
an
a while.
actor. But even I don't even remember him. Like, I think he was in a couple things or something. Like, he's never really the lead. I don't think. Like, he's usually like a
Well,
supporting or a villain
he's
or
he's
something.
been in a few things. Yeah, he's been kind of a villain. I don't know. It's like everybody else, he got old, and
Hmm.
once you get to a certain age, you're no longer considered leading man material.
Well,
He
unless you're
was
doing like Cocoon.
right. Yeah. He was in a few other pretty good movies as well. This to me was his best performance, especially as a lead. It was such a great character, and he really, really did a fabulous job with it. And like I
Yeah,
said,
I loved him, but like I said, I wasn't familiar with much of his work,
mhm.
and he was. I mean, honestly, if you had to compare the two, I like him better than Keanu Reeves. I mean, I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
as Neo.
Um, and it's such, you pointed out earlier. Usually, Keith Sutherland and William Hurt are leading men in their own rights. So to have them as, I don't want to say second bananas, but as more supporting frontline characters, they still do a really, really excellent job, and they manage to take those characters and completely make them their own in their own different ways, which is really cool. And then Jennifer Connelly, fabulous on her own, just an amazing, kind of the beating heart of the whole picture, sort of the reason why John Murdoch is doing what he's doing, because he wants to know what that connection is. Excuse me.
Exactly. And I liked her, but I honestly think I wish I saw more of her in the movie.
Oh well, yeah.
I don't know where. I don't mean wish I saw her naked, but I'm like whatever. I'm just like I wanted to like I wish I could have seen her in a lot more of the stuff, because like I feel like she kind of disappears in the middle of the movie. She's sort of there around. Like, she comes to the police station, she talks to the uncle on the phone, with the
Right.
detective, with William Hurt's character. The uncle, we never talked about the uncle. The uncle is
Oh
really,
yeah.
really good too.
Yeah.
I
He
liked
was
him.
cool. Well,
I don't know who he is, who the actor is, but he was really good.
I I forget. He is somebody that I should remember. I don't remember anymore. But
What was his
he,
name?
I don't recall.
Was it Carl? Who was Carl Harris?
Um,
That character. Um, I don't
I
know.
can't say I remember.
Maybe that was him, because his
Oh yeah, John Bluthal.
yeah, John Bluthal. So
Okay.
he was wonderful. So I mean,
Yeah.
all these guys were just fantastic. I mean, just a fantastic casting, especially the people I weren't, other than Jennifer Connelly and obviously Kiefer Sutherland, but also William Hurt. I'm familiar with him a lot, but
Right. Right.
Rufus Sewell and a lot of the other guys I was not familiar with, and they did a fantastic job.
Well, as far as Jennifer Connelly kind of disappearing for a little while, to me it's very similar to what's her name? Sean. I can't think names anymore, but in Blade Runner, her character kind of
Oh,
vanishes for a little while too in the
uh,
film because it, if you're there all the time, it's kind of too satisfying. You want to miss her, you want to miss the character, you want the character, your lead character, to miss that character. So
Sean Young.
John Young, yes, and
Yes.
who was at the time was also gorgeous. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, there. You can't have them there too much. You don't want them to be. You don't want to be too. Have too much of her there. It's just enough, in my opinion, that the character starts to really want to have to go after and find her and everything, and we start to miss her because she's freaking glorious and she's a really interesting character, and you want to know what's going on. You want to know what happens to her, and if she's going to be okay, because she's also in danger, like everybody else is from these alien creatures. Um,
Definitely.
and some of them, they're just so creepy. Like they had a couple that were like kids, and they're just like these weird. They have these weird teeth and nails, and they click. They're just really strange,
And they bite.
and they bite. I know, it's just amazing. So
It was so weird, like that scene where he's like hanging on, and I thought that the guy was that the kid was gonna like let him go, like just grab his hand and just let him go or something. But he
this
starts
was on the
biting
fire
him.
escape.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
fire escape. He starts biting him, and I'm like, that would hurt like hell. Like, oh,
Yeah. It's really amazing, and where a lot of sci-fi movies are kind of cerebral and everything. This is cerebral too, but there's enough action, there's enough creepiness going on that it hopefully should hold your attention. It's kind of like I said, kind of like a mashup of several different kinds of films going on, and it's successfully. You don't get a whole lot of movies that successfully do that. Especially, I think Roger Ebert mentions that you get a lot of modern movies that are sort of film noir-ish, where it's more of like an homage. Where
mhm.
this is really kind of stands out on its own, and it really is sort of a modern film noir. It just happens to also be a sci-fi movie at the same
Right.
time, which is really really cool. So,
That's beautiful. I love it. Like I absolutely adore this movie. So,
is this
um,
something that you would show to other folks then?
yeah, definitely. Well, okay. Let me let me phrase this right though. But I would show it to like-minded people. This
Hmm.
is not something I would show to Jackie or somebody who isn't.
Poor Jackie.
Oh no, she just this isn't her type of movie. I mean, she needs something kind of. She likes more stuff that's kind of more brainless, for her because she doesn't pay attention a lot to a lot of movies and stuff, and that's a lot of people are like that. People with short attention spans would not like this movie.
Right.
This is definitely a thinking movie. This is definitely something I would show somebody if they hadn't seen it. A lot of people have seen it.
Oh yeah.
We were gonna get Joe on here, but it was too last minute, and he wasn't able to do it. But we are gonna get Joe Turk to come, and he is a big a fan of this movie.
Oh,
So
that's a shame. I wish I'd known that.
yeah, I mean, we'll maybe we'll talk another time with him about it or something
Yeah.
for something else or whatever. But he enjoyed it. He has the DVD of it and everything, which didn't have the director's cut. My Blu-ray has the director's cut and the original cut. I decided to watch the director's cut. I don't know why. Should have probably watched the theatrical cut. I don't even know, like, because from what you're describing everything from the theatrical cut, and it sounds like everything that we've described so far has been in the, like I haven't said anything to you that you go, oh, I don't think that was in the original cut. Like all of that was.
Yeah. I don't remember a whole lot of difference other than I know it's longer. I know some of the scenes are
It's
longer.
15 minutes longer.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think there's anything too revelatory in the director's cut other than, extended scenes and maybe some extra stuff, but
I,
not enough that it stands out.
well, I don't understand why people do that. I mean, I understand if you want to have your own cut and everything. I mean, you look at Blade Runner that had like 4 fucking cuts of the damn film, or three or four cuts of the film, and I mean that was all because I guess
Well, he got forced into doing the narration. He didn't want to do the narration. And then he only had certain access to certain stuff. So he was never really able to put out the very version that he wanted until three versions later on. So I understand with that. In this particular case, I'd have to go back and listen to the commentary. There may be reasons why they just needed to cut certain scenes, and he just felt that it was more of a complete vision to go back and restore those scenes. It's probably my feeling.
Yeah.
You know,
Usually Kevin Smith says that like there's no director's cut. Like he won't release something as a director's cut. He might call it an extended cut or something. He won't call it a director's cut because he says the film that he puts out in the theaters is always the director's cut to him.
Mhm.
And I wonder if Alex wasn't necessarily 100% happy, like wanted a little bit more stuff, or if there were things that he didn't like in the original.
It's possible. I don't recall if I think it came out by New Line Cinema. I don't know that they forced him to do anything. But one thing I can tell you, I did see this in the theater 3 or 4 times when it was there because I was so blown away. And let me tell you, man, seeing it in a big screen in a theater was amazeballs, absolutely amazeballs. And if this ever gets re-released on the big screen, you need to go see it because you'll just be blown away. I mean, I'm sure a 4K of this would be great too, but just to see it in that scale, just fabulous, absolutely fabulous.
It's not on 4K, right? Like yet, I don't think, right? It didn't get a 4K release yet.
I have no idea. I don't know.
Oh, that'd be interesting to look into. But I mean, right now I don't have a 4K player, so
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, no, because remember, I think we were there. Remember, my 4K player was not working.
Oh, it's
right?
So it's still not working right.
Yeah,
huh?
it's still not working, so I got to get a new one. But eventually, I think there's other things that take precedence in my room.
Well, I'll tell you what. If this is out in 4K, this is definitely a movie that I would buy specifically to see on 4K if I, decided to throw my money in that new technology. It would be tempting for this movie.
You eventually, I think, I swear to God, so you're a film freak, as we both are.
Hence the title of the show.
Well, that's why I said it.
Yep.
But the reason why I say it is because you're really into good films and good films that you want the best quality sound and the best quality look and the best quality whatever.
Right.
And I understand like right now is not the time to be spending extra blah blah blah. Right. Well, actually, maybe it is. Because you're working and you still got probably a little bit, you'll have a little extra scratch. So maybe at some time you can upgrade to 4K.
Well, my only hesitance is that I know what's going to happen. The moment I buy a 4K, they're going to come out 2 days later. Oh, now we have 8K players and 8K TVs, and none of them are backwards compatible. So you have to buy all the new stuff all over again, and I'm just going to freaking explode. It's just driving me nuts.
I don't know. That's the thing with me. I got into 4K later, as you know, and it hasn't. I probably thought that too. Is like, oh man, 8K, because I kept hearing things about 8K and 12K and all these other Ks, and I'm just like, oh shit, should I wait or what? And I decided to do it, and it's been over a year since I've had my year and a half since I've had my 4K. So. I say do it, dude.
Well, I can tell you what I did do is I did recently just buy bias lights. So they're like those string of multicolored lights that you put on the back of your screen TV, your Blu-ray or your 4K. And the idea is that you find the setting and you change it to either like I think it's a cool white or purple or blue, whatever it is, and it helps enhance your visual experience of the film because of the way that it balances the contrast. So I did invest in that. It was like $30, but small thing. But so I'll be adding those to my TV this weekend, as a matter of fact. So.
Well, that's funny. We still like because you're doing this from your house, right? You're not doing this from the studio or anything,
right?
And so when you are allowed to go, well, technically, I guess you are allowed to go back into the studio anyway.
Yeah, I can go there. It's it's just me, so it's just easier just to do stuff at home,
And I guess, yeah. So from home, it's just easier, or whatever. But when you get back to the studio, decking out the studio with really cool shit, giving that, a good sound, a better sound bar or something,
right.
And all that stuff. So.
And I bought a couple extra mics so that we could have a nice setup because remember, we had that nice set for Film Freaks, but we can't do it right now. No one's there.
I know. You
So
know,
this is what we have to do during the crisis,
I know. This is the second season of right?
Yeah.
Is this second? Yeah, it's the second season of Film Freaks. So, it's a crazy time right now. I mean, doing everything through Zoom, which is easier to get everybody, like you could get Joe from home. You could get, Lenore if she wanted to, you know what I mean, from where she's
Well,
at,
in theory, we could get Alex Proyas if we had his Zoom, if we had his, contact information, and we
Yeah.
could get everything right from the horse's mouth, which I would freaking love.
Hey, if Alex, if you're listening or watching, I guess watching, because you're watching this. If you're watching this, hit us up, man. We would love to interview you
Please,
because we would
please.
die to interview you. I know Paul definitely
Oh
has a
yeah.
million questions he'd probably
Oh
ask,
yeah. And
especially
the thing
about Dark
is
City.
though, while we have all of this stuff going on with the COVID, and if you're looking for something that's more than just kind of like, a popcorn film. I mean, there's nothing wrong with popcorn films in and of themselves. It's just, to me, it's just too many of them. That's all you get out there. If you want to take 2.5, 3 hours of your life and just set aside some time, turn off your phone, throw the kids in a closet, give the dog something to eat so he doesn't bother you, and just sit down and absorb this film, I think you're going to really, really appreciate it. And I think you're going to thank yourself for allowing yourself to do this, because they don't make movies like this anymore. They really, really don't, you
Well,
know?
I liked in the beginning of our conversation is you mentioning the fact that it had a deeper meaning than just like what's on the surface, right? Because you
Right.
look at the popcorn movies, yeah, they have that's on the surface. What you see is what you get. In this movie, it's about it's about being human and having our thoughts and our memories and everything. And do we need them, or is those memories and those things what define our soul and things like that, where I'm like, I didn't really necessarily, because I only watched it one time, I didn't necessarily get that from that movie. Like, I mean, it was all just a big jumble of stuff happening, of like, all of a sudden I'm like, oh wait, who's this new character, what's going on here, because I'm just sort of like absorbing the movie, right? Like I'm sort of just getting it. Now that I look back at it, I'll probably watch it again and again, and this would even be a movie I'd watch by myself, which, I mean, you were saying, would I show this to somebody? I'd also watch this by myself. Like, this is not even with the commentaries on and stuff, like
Oh yeah.
there's
Great.
commentaries. Let me read real back at the back of this. If you get this Blu-ray, listen to all this stuff. You have the Blu-ray, I guarantee you, right?
Yes. Oh yeah.
So, all new director's cut and original theatrical cut of the film. So it asks you in the beginning, do you want which one? And then it's got documentaries and an introduction by Alex Proyas, memories of Shell Beach, the making of, architecture of dreams, which I'm sure you would have been watching or something.
Absolutely.
Production gallery, text essays, Neil Gaiman's review of
There you go.
Dark City, which did Siskel and Ebert do a review of them? Because like
Oh yeah.
did Siskel do it? Because I know
Roger Ebert did.
I know he did it in the thing, but I wonder if Siskel and Ebert did one for their show, because I don't know when they stopped. Was it 98 or 99?
I
Because
don't
I think he
recall.
died in 99, if
Yeah.
I'm correct. So I wonder if I'm sure Siskel watched this movie before he passed away. Director's cut fact track. That's kind of cool. Theatrical trailer, multiple audio commentary tracks featuring the director Alex Proyas, writers Lim Dobbs and David S. Goyer, which we did not mention that this is that David S. Goyer co-wrote this with Alex Proyas and Lim
Nice.
Dobbs. But I love David S. Goyer. I've been a huge fan of him since Kickboxer 2. Weird, like to say that, but as that being our thing. But let's see. Then director of photography. I am not going to say any of these the director of photography or production designers' names. You have to look them up because they are.
Oh yeah. No, I know who you mean. That's the Polish guy. I forget his name.
Darius
It's
Wolski.
Darius Adam Wolski. Yeah.
And then
He's the guy who did The Crow, and he was in Pirates of the Caribbean. He did that and a bunch of stuff.
And then also the production designer is Patrick Tadopoulos. I don't know. And I butchered that name. I know that, but it's probably also Polish or something. and film critic Roger Ebert. So
Hmm.
you get a commentary track with Roger Ebert. That's pretty cool.
So to me, it's just a really, really outstanding example of how you can take, a very, very creative person and give them the freedom and hopefully the money to be able to realize their vision and their dream, and you are rewarded with just an outstanding, magnificent film that is not like anything else. It's, similar to me, like you might find with, say, Guillermo del Toro, where he'll create Pan's Labyrinth and some of these other films all by himself, and all of a sudden the movie world is like amazed. It's like, wow, where did this great stuff come from? It's like, well, if you allow these directors and these people the creative freedom to follow their dreams and not just make the same old sequels and reboots and remakes and trying to chase the next dollar from the teenagers, then you're going to actually have some great films every once in a great while. I mean, truly great films, like the same level as the golden age of the 30s. I mean, I would put this right up there. It's just an amazing, unforgettable, unique film that is unlike anything else, and that's why I wanted to talk about it on Film Freaks.
Yeah, I absolutely adored this movie. Thank you so much for like picking it,
Yep.
because I wasn't like, I owned it. I'm not. I was eventually gonna watch it. It would have, but you know how many movies I have that I've never seen. So
Same here.
this is just one of them. And so I was just looking for an excuse to watch it, and then I was like, you know what, this is fucking good. Like I can see why so many people talk about this movie, and it has such a following to it. I'm just wondering, I guess it didn't do very well in the box office then.
Not originally, no.
See, and that maybe goes to the long lines of everybody's expecting things to be like Titanic, and everything, that, this is a sleeper, this is something that people talk about later on, right?
Right.
Like they don't talk about when they're, after they watch it or whatever, So I absolutely
Yeah.
loved it. I thought it was great.
It has more of a following now than it did when it first came out. But then, Titanic kind of blew everybody out of the water at the time. So, that's what's going to happen. All the teenage girls ran to see, Titanic. They did not want to go see this film.
What? No teenage girls wanting to go see Dark City?
No, I don't think so. This is before nerds were cool.
I know, seriously. But no, that was actually, it was, wasn't it? Because that didn't happen like 2010, or whatever, 2005 or something. That
There you go.
the nerds were cool. But no, Dark City was. I mean, and the city itself, like, obviously it's called Dark City, so you would think that maybe I didn't even notice until like later on that the whole city was just pitch black, and that apparently those the strangers didn't like sunlight, and
Right.
that's why there is no there everything is dark, or whatever. And
Right.
I'm
Right.
guessing that's why the whole thing's tilted the way that it is, the planet, so that there is no sun.
Right.
That's just so interesting. Like all of that stuff. Like it was just a very cool, very a fun movie.
Very detailed, very well thought out. And I really like how Alex Proyas allows the story to be told. He doesn't push anything. He doesn't jump scare you. He doesn't push extra explosions or extra action or extra crap that we don't really need. He's allowing people to think and to see and to react like you normally would, almost like we're in the same level as John Murdoch, sort of experiencing everything. And that's what is such a cool thing about this film.
Holy crap, you're right. Yeah, it's like the audience is John Murdoch.
Right.
We're seeing everything for the first time, just like he would. Because like I mean, it was sort of like the kind of typical. I just woke up from a coma or an amnesia. And I don't know who I am or what's going on, kind of thing. Also, which is very film noir, I think, as well.
Yes, very much so.
It has that feeling of it, and then all of a sudden you start kind of getting to know everything that's going on, just as he's starting to get to know everything that's going
Right.
on.
And it's addressing a very primal fear, in my opinion, because, we all are kind of like the sum of our memories and the sums of our histories, and we all value the continuity that we have. Now, we may not know who our great, 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 great grandparents are for the most part, but you generally know who your father is and who your grandparents are. And there's this continuity that people value, and they say, well, I'm somebody because I'm made up of this person and this family and all that. All these people don't have any of that. Every day they wake up with a completely new personality with no memories and no history because of these aliens who are screwing with them. As a matter of fact, even at the end of the film, when John Murdoch kind of takes over and there's a happily ever after going on, all these people still have lost all of their original memories, so they're never going to experience any of that again. So thinking it out further, you're going to have to say, well, okay, not only is he going to have to feed all these people, but now they're all going to have to create their own lives and create their own memories and create new memories in this weird city that now they know is a spaceship in the middle of outer space. So how are they going to, how are they going to figure that out? And what is the future for these people?
There was that interesting. We didn't even talk about the train situation where he was on the train. He was trying to leave the city, and he couldn't because I guess when they said the only way to leave it is through the express or something,
Right.
and the express would
It'd
always
never
go.
come.
It would never stop or something, right? Or whatever.
Right.
Like it kept going. It was so interesting. Like I was just like, what in the world? So nobody can leave this fucking city and go to Shell Beach.
Shell Beach.
And so by the end of the movie, there is a Shell Beach. It's like right over there or whatever. They kind of point to it and everything. And so like everything starts to come to happen, or whatever.
Right. And I love how Murdoch is sort of asking the questions that nobody wants to hear. He's like, haven't you ever noticed it's never daytime? Or haven't you ever noticed, Shell Beach, everyone seems to know, but no, and people think they've been there, but nobody can tell me where it is. Nobody has specific memories about this. And, that's when the police guy's like, yeah, you're right. And then he starts questioning his reality too. Excuse me.
Yeah, and then the doctor has to explain it to them that everybody doesn't have a reality.
Right.
All their realities have been wiped or whatever. And so, like, because I'm guessing it's because I don't know if it was necessarily explained or not, but I don't remember this being like because there was a lot to take in.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea like I guess all these humans were sort of kidnapped from Earth, right, and taken to this planet, right? So then they get their memories wiped, and all of a sudden they're not who they were in their past. Like he's not John Murdoch married to Emma Murdoch anymore. He's just John Murdoch, but Emma still has her memories and her things, and she's like thinking, how come this guy doesn't fucking know who I am? Like, what's going on here?
Right.
Right. And I mean, there's just so much.
And not to get too deep into the cerebral stuff, but I'm also reminded a little bit of Plato, where Plato talks about how our reality is a series of shadows on the cave wall from the firelight, and we think that what we're seeing is real, but we're not really seeing what we think we're seeing, and there is no real reality. And it's the same thing that these people are going through. It's like somebody all of a sudden poured sand on that fire, and those shadows on the cave wall are gone. And they've been given that pill just like the guy in Matrix does. And all of a sudden they wake up and they discover the reality they thought they were experiencing is not reality at all. And how do you cope with that? I mean, what do you do with that? It's just kind of mind-blowing.
I have seen that in a lot of movies, like or TV shows too, like or whatever. Like maybe even Twilight Zone's probably.
Memento does that a little bit too.
Yeah, well, Memento does it in such a fucking weird way that like having everything go backwards.
And Christopher Nolan has talked about how this movie is an influence on Memento.
Well, see, there you go. Like so many movies have kind of probably been inspired by this movie
Yeah.
because this was a completely 100% original film, and everything. People start taking stuff, as we said. We keep saying Buffy, but it's absolutely true. When I saw the strangers floating, I'm like, the fucking gentlemen, there they are. All they have to do is go like this, or whatever.
Gosh.
Which absolutely fantastic way to kind of create something that people might be familiar with, but also give us something new. The idea of taking the voices, but in this movie they say go to sleep,
Yes.
right? And everything.
Shh. I love that.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's great.
It's
It
so
was,
cool.
yeah, it was such. I mean, it was such a cool movie. Like, dude, thank you for like picking this out of.
Oh yeah.
I think the first episode of Film Freaks, when we did Waiting for Guffman with you, and everything, you were showing Lila a bunch of different movies, and this was one of them. So I knew that this was something that was going to come up at some point.
Yeah.
Just wasn't sure when. But
And at some point, I'd like to do The Crow too. Maybe next season.
Next season, you don't want to do two Alex Proyas like movies similar on the same season.
Right.
You do The Crow, dude, because I would love to come back on that one. We can't, unfortunately. Well, we could get Rochelle Davis, who I'm friends with, who's
And Ernie Hudson, get us Ernie Hudson.
Oh God, Ernie Hudson would be great. If I could get Ernie Hudson, I would die. But
yeah.
I'd want him for Ghostbusters. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, get him for
would be
both, man.
Well, if I ever become friends with him,
there you
if I ever meet him,
please do.
Like, let's hang out so I can have you on my podcast all the time.
Sounds great.
Even on ones that have nothing to do with you.
All right. Well, I think we've pretty much done a good turn here for Dark City. I'm really glad that you enjoyed it, and I hope folks who have not seen this film go out there and check it out, because it's really, really worth seeing. I think you'll really enjoy it if you give it a chance. Just turn your phone off.
Yeah, turn your phone off. Turn your brain on. Because you're gonna do a lot of thinking. This is a thinking movie. This is not a like non-thinking movie. Where you can just turn your brain off and just laugh or just joke around. You have to watch this movie and pay attention, because there's a lot of shit that happens. And I feel like this is a movie you can't even watch just once. As you said you saw it 4 times in the theater.
Oh yeah.
I say that should be at least a prerequisite of this film, is to watch it probably 4 times. I'll eventually watch it 4 times, I'm sure, because it's one of those films I want to like dive into more of the technical aspects and the story aspects of like trying to understand it.
Well, I'll end by sharing with you a little fantasy where I think it would be so cool if I could sort of step into time and take a DVD player with me and like a nice big TV, and then show this movie to Ed Wood. How would Ed Wood react to seeing this film? I think he would love it. I think he'd freak out.
I think he'd freak out if you showed him a DVD player, dude.
Oh, well, yeah, there's that too. But
what is this? What is this magical thing right here?
Because I really do think he thought along those kind of lines. I just think he had no way of translating it from his brain into a script or anything like that. I think he thought big like this. He just couldn't realize any of it.
Also, you look at somebody like Ed Wood, who spent most of the majority of time doing low budget films because he just wasn't in with the Hollywood elite. But he didn't want to be. He was not that. And that was another thing. You say this is New Line Cinema. New Line was created in like the 80s, right? Like 1981 or 2 or something. 84 was when they did Nightmare on Elm Street, and I don't know if that was the first, but I think that was one of the first that put New Line on the map. But Ed Wood died in the early 80, like 80, I think 80, so he died before like he was able to see a studio like New Line Cinema exist. The New Line Cinema probably would have worked with him, because
United Artists is the other one that probably would have as well.
What would have been great is if he worked with the Canon groups, like Ed Wood.
Golden Globus.
Yeah, that would have been awesome. That would have. See,
There you go.
I want to like. I wish we did have a time machine and we can go back in time and take Ed Wood to different times in history
I
and
I
put him
wish
into
this all the time, and there's a movie in there.
there
I'm
is.
telling you, there's a movie in there.
Well, they're already doing an Ed Wood movie or whatever somewhere. So, but maybe another one wouldn't hurt. But
Ed Wood Time Machine. There you
oh
go.
my
Let's write it.
God, Ed Wood time machine. Well, thank you so much, David, for this and for suggesting this. If you guys want to check out stuff on Indie Film Cafe, check out indiefilmcafe.net, our new official website. And our old official website, what is that, Mr. Paul?
Oh, that's indiefilmcafe.reviews.com.
Just .reviews, but
.reviews.
it's still there. It's still there. I mean, you're
Yeah.
still doing stuff with it. I still need to send you things for it.
Yes, you do.
But yeah, so I just want to say thank you. I think this is awesome. If you guys haven't seen Dark City, please go watch it. We highly suggest it. If you are watching and you have seen it, let us know what your thoughts are. Did you agree?
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
know, did you not like what
Read the
we thought?
love.
You know, did you disagree with us? Because come on, like this is a movie that I think also has debates. You know, on
Sure.
maybe theme or substance of the plot. You know, so I would love to see more reviews of Dark City and people reviewing this film. You know, and stuff. Like retrospective reviews. You know, and
Oh,
everything.
yeah. And like I said, would love to talk to Alex Proyas someday.
Yes,
Put
Alex
it on my
Proyas,
bucket list.
you know, hook us up. You know, maybe you'll be at a convention someday.
There you go.
Scares I
Or
care. Get them.
I would happily settle for talking with Jennifer Connelly. I'm just saying.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't complain about that.
No, not at all.
You know, is she your new crush now? Well, I guess. She's
Oh,
your
no, no,
crush.
no.
Old crush.
She's an old crush.
No, for sure. So yeah, Jennifer Connelly, call Paul.
There you go.
know, and hook that up. But yeah, so thank you guys so much. Is there anything that you wanted to say left?
I think we're done.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and enjoy the rest of your time out there in Indie Filmland.
Yep.
Bye.
And thanks very much for watching Film Freaks, and we will see you next month. Bye.
All right, bye.